In this tutorial, I'll be demonstrating the new features that we've added recently to the Silica codebase with emphasis on the WPS pin attacks. Now, WPS, or Wi-Fi Protected Setup, allows you to enter a pin number instead of a password to allow the client, the wireless client, to grab the wireless configuration from the access point itself and auto-configure itself. Now, there's a weakness in this process that we can leverage to brute force a very small key space in order to derive the correct pin, which eventually leads us to the WPA passphrase, no matter how complex it is, or the configuration of the access point itself. Now, there's a lot that goes into a successful attack here, so we, of course, in Silica style, have done all the hard work for you. You just need to right-click. We've made it our focus in this release, 7.8, to enhance and optimize the WPS attacks to dramatically decrease the amount of time it takes to discover the pin and ultimately disclose the WPA key, so that all the other Silica attacks are available to you. Now, traditionally, in order to attack a WPA network, you need to obtain a four-way handshake. In order to obtain a four-way handshake, it requires that a client is actually connected to the access point. And once you have the handshake, then it takes a very long time to brute force the actual PSK. Now, with the WPS attack, it does not require that a client be connected to the access point. In fact, you can be the only client that is interacting with the access point in general. So before we actually get into the new features that we've added in the Silica, I want to show you really quick what a WPS pin looks like. So we've got here two routers. You flip them over, you've got the serial on a sticker, you've got the serial number, the MAC address, and the WPS pin. Sometimes it's labeled as WPS pin, sometimes it's not so obvious. But if you take a look at the format here, we have a 4-digit pin, a hyphen, and then another 4 digits. This attack is actually broken up into stages. The weakness is the fact that the pin number, the first 4 digits of the pin, if that is correct, but something is incorrect in the last 4 digits of the pin, the access point actually acts in a different way. It actually lets you know that the first 4 are correct, but the last 4 aren't. So by taking advantage of this weakness, we can brute force the first 4 and that limits the key space quite a bit. And then once we have the first 4, then we can move on to the next. Now the last 4 digits, it's 3 digits, and then the last digit is a checksum. So the last can be calculated by us. So we really only need to brute force 3 digits in the last one for the second stage. So let's switch back to Silica. And yes, I did Google for these images, by the way. So switching back to Silica here, we can sort. I'm going to go ahead and stop this. This has only been collecting for about 7 minutes now. But we can sort by auth type. And we can see that actually WPS is on quite a few of these access points where WPA is enabled. So if I were to pick one of these access points, I'm going to pick this one for example, right-click, and I'm going to choose WPS, get WPS info. What that's going to do is actually going to interact with the access point and ask it for some information. Now, the information that you get that's disclosed to you in this particular interaction is quite valuable in this particular attack. So now I go over to the WPS info and I see that it gives me the make and the model number, which is very helpful. So I see that it's a Linksys E3200. Now, if my goal is to crack the pin, then I can take this information, this E3200, and switch over to the WPS info tab. I see in here this is information that we have given to you that's useful for you in your tests, and you can expect this to grow. But in here we can see that I've already come across a Linksys E3200, and we have here known pins, known WPS pins. This is ranges that I can use to decrease the amount of time that it takes for me to crack the pin. Now, if you look closely, this E3200, the known pin starts with 69. This is on another access point. This is on the back of some access point that I've had, or maybe even using Google to find these pin ranges. But if you look closely, you see that this Linksys E3000, also an E3 series, also starts with a pin of 69. So that means that more than likely this Linksys that I come across, it might be a good idea for me to start with a pin that starts with 69 so that I can crack this pin much faster. So I can take this information, go into the Preferences tab, click on the Wireless Cracking tab, and modify the ranges here. Again, this is a 2-stage attack. The first stage, we're going to crack the first half of the pin. Now, since I know that since I know that this device is more than likely starting with 6.9, I can have this start with 6.9 if I wanted to, but I'm going to modify it even further just for sake of time. So I'm going to take it down, get it really close to the actual pin, and then the second half of the pin I could leave. It doesn't really take very long for it to exhaust this entire key space for the second stage of the attack, but again, for sake of time, I'm going to modify this to be pretty close to the correct pin. So now I click OK. Now everything is set up the way that I need it to be for this attack. And before I switch off this WPS info tab, I want to make note that we have come across a lot of interesting firmwares and a lot of interesting access points in the way that they behave when doing this attack. It is important to note that not all access points actually are brute forceable, in a sense that you can keep asking in succession, or keep attempting to authenticate with this WPS pin without disrupting or causing a denial of service in the access point. So we have Silica, in this release, we've added some optimizations to the code that allows it to detect these types of things and makes it highly optimized for sake of speed and to make sure that you're not going to accidentally, possibly crash the router. So now I can go into get WPS pin. Now that I have now that I have my ranges selected. So this is the first stage is what we call auto sensing. The auto sensing phase is when Silica determines the best route to take and the most optimized settings for the quickest pin recovery. So what this means is each access point, since each access point is different, we might be able to benefit from being able to ask or attempt each pin with a faster delay. The other tools that are out there that are cracking WPS pins, they don't have something like this that auto configures itself for the most optimized speed. They're all staying at a delay of 60 seconds, which means they're making a request, waiting 60 seconds for the access point to kind of recover from that attempt, and then it tries the next pin. Now, Silica will determine how fast it can make these requests and configure itself accordingly. But another step that it's going to take, once it figures out what the delay is and how fast it can attempt these pin authentications, it's also going to determine how many clients can connect at the same time. So by doing this, we create new threads with new fake clients that will interact with the access point. To the access point, it seems like 5 new clients, or how many ever X amount of clients have connected and want to authenticate with WPS. If that's the case, if we find that we can connect with 5 different clients, we're going to speed this up by 5 times, which is a dramatic improvement in this particular attack. So all of this stuff is happening in the background for you at the very beginning of the stage. Of course, you can in the preferences turn this off if you'd like, but it's worth it to take the few minutes that is required to determine how fast, because it's literally going to save you hours on this attack. So I'm going to go ahead and let this run. I'm going to pause the recording for a moment while it gets to the next stage of the attack. Okay, so fast forwarding a little bit into the future, the auto configuration has completed at this point. It's figured out that it can actually ask or attempt each pin in 5-second intervals, which is so much better than a static 60 seconds. So this is going to save us a lot of time. Now, this is going to this is on the first stage. It's actually already, it says it's guessed the first part of the pin, which is 6909. Now it's working on the second stage pin, so it has to crack those 3 digits and then calculate the last digit, which is the checksum. It'll continue that in stage 2. Once it has those 2 completed, then it will populate the interface with the pin number and also the recovered key. And at that point, we'll be able to have all of the features that Silica has available to us, meaning once we have the recovered key, then we can build decryption routines for all of the clients, and we can build attacks and connect to the network from there. So the other thing to mention is the ability to resume an attack. Once we've started an attack, we've started a particular pin range, maybe you needed to stop and come back later. When you right click on the network that you've already attacked, if there is any data that there is any data from a previous scan or from a previous attempt, you can resume from that, and I'll show you that in a moment. This should actually finish up with the pin cracking here. So soon it's going to populate the interface with this data. Okay, so now we have the pin number, we have the recovered key, quick answers, and the pin number here. So now if we were to right click, then we'd have available to us all of the attacks inside Silica. We could perform man-in-the-middle attacks, passive session hijacking, decrypt all the traffic for each client that's on the network, and so on. So I believe there's one network here that we have the ability to resume. So for example, this network here, we've started attacks, and this keeps saved all of the actual configuration as well. So it knows, if it knows that it can ask within 5-second intervals and how many clients can be connected concurrently, it'll load all that into the configuration automatically and start where it left off. So that's actually quite a useful feature for this particular attack. So that is it for the WPS pin attacks in Silica. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us at admin@immunityinc.com or also at silica@immunityinc.com. Thanks for watching.